Right now, somewhere in the world, a kid is losing a video game and throwing a controller across the room. Someone is shuffling a deck of cards. Somebody just rolled a dice and held their breath. We treat games like they're just fun, a way to kill time, something you do when the real work is done. But games are older than money, older than the wheel, older than writing itself. In fact, humans were playing games before we could even write down the rules. And the story of the very first game is not a story about fun at all. It's a story about survival, death, and a famine that lasted 18 years. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at that phone in your hand very differently. Let's get one thing straight first. Nobody can point to a single moment and say, there, that's the first game. Games didn't get invented the way the light bulb did. They bubbled up everywhere all at once, across the whole planet. But we do have contenders, and the oldest ones are so old they make the pyramids look modern. Start with the dice. Not the plastic cubes, you know. The originals were bones. Specifically the ankle bones of sheep and goats, called astragali. These little bones have 4 flat sides, and when you throw them, they land differently each time. Random, unpredictable, perfect. Archaeologists have found piles of these polished ankle bones at sites tens of thousands of years old. Our ancestors were sitting in caves, throwing bones, betting on the outcome, long before they planted a single crop. Now here's where it gets strange. Around 5,000 years ago, in the deserts of ancient Egypt, someone did something no animal has ever done. They drew a grid, 30 squares, laid out in 3 rows of 10, and they invented a game to play on it. We call it Senet. Senet is one of the oldest board games we've ever found. We've dug up boards that are over 4,500 years old, and Egyptians were obsessed with it. Rich people, poor people, everyone. They scratched the board into stone floors, into temple roofs, anywhere they could. And this is the part that gets me. When they buried their dead, they put Senet boards in the tombs. Not because the dead were bored, because they believed the game was how your soul got to the afterlife. Let that sink in. To an ancient Egyptian, this wasn't just a board game. Playing Senet was practice for dying. The idea was that after death, your soul had to make a dangerous journey through the underworld, past monsters and traps, to reach paradise. And the game mirrored that exact journey. Each square was a stage. Some squares were safe, some threw you back. There was even a square you could fall into and drown. King Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh, was buried with 4 Senet sets. On the wall of Queen Nefertari's tomb, there's a painting of her sitting alone, playing Senet against an invisible opponent. She's not playing a person. She's playing death itself. And she's winning. That was the whole point. Win the game, and you win eternal life. But Egypt wasn't the only place inventing games in the ancient world. And a few hundred miles away, in what is now Iraq, something even more sophisticated was buried in a royal grave. And when a British archaeologist dug it up in the 1920s, he had no idea he'd found one of the most beautiful mysteries in gaming history. His name was Leonard Woolley, and he was excavating the royal cemetery of the ancient city of Ur. Down in the tombs, next to the bodies of kings and servants, he found a game board. Gorgeous, inlaid with shell, red limestone, and deep blue lapis lazuli. 20 squares in a strange shape. He called it the Royal Game of Ur. It was about 4,500 years old. And here was the problem. He had the board. He had the pieces. He even had the dice. But nobody on Earth knew how to play it. For almost 70 years, the Royal Game of Ur just sat in the British Museum. A beautiful thing that no living person could actually play. The rules had died with the last Babylonian who knew them, thousands of years ago. And then a man named Irving Finkel changed everything. Finkel is a curator at the British Museum. A guy with a long white beard who looks exactly like you'd want a keeper of ancient secrets to look. He specializes in reading cuneiform, that wedge-shaped writing pressed into clay tablets. And one day, going through the museum's collection, he found a tablet, a small, cracked piece of clay written by a Babylonian scribe around 2,000 years ago. And on that tablet were the rules. The scribe had written down how to play the game. Think about what that means for a second. Somebody thousands of years ago sat down and thought, this game matters. Future people should know how to play it. They pressed the rules into wet clay, never imagining that the person who'd finally read them would be a bearded Englishman staring at a display case trying to bring their game back to life. And it worked. Today you can play the Royal Game of Ur, the exact game a Sumerian king played before he died. It's a race. 2 players dashing their pieces around the board, trying to get home first, knocking each other back along the way. It is, no exaggeration, the ancestor of backgammon, a game your grandfather probably played. Same DNA, 5,000 years apart. So we've got dice, Senet, the Game of Ur, all of them ancient, all of them beautiful. But none of them answer the real question. Not what game is oldest, but why. Why did humans invent games in the first place? What are they actually for? And for that, we have to go to ancient Greece and the strangest origin story ever told about a game. The historian Herodotus, the guy they call the father of history, wrote it down around 2,500 years ago. He said the games of dice and knucklebones and ball were invented by a people called the Lydians, and the reason he gives is heartbreaking. According to the story, Lydia was hit by a terrible famine. No food, people were starving, and they had no idea when it would end. So the Lydians came up with a plan that is either genius or completely insane. On one day, they would play games. All day. Total focus. Nothing but the game. And because the game absorbed them so completely, they didn't feel the hunger. They forgot they were starving. Then the next day, they would eat what little food they had. Then the next day, games again. Eat, play, eat, play. One day of food, one day of distraction. And here's the punchline. Herodotus says they lived this way for 18 years. 18 years of using games to survive a famine that wouldn't end. The game wasn't entertainment. It was medicine. It was the thing that kept them alive when there was nothing to live on. Now, is that story literally true? Probably not exactly. Historians argue about it. But here's why it doesn't matter. Because it captures something real about what a game does to the human brain. A good game pulls you out of your own suffering. It shrinks the whole world down to a board, a card, a move. Your worries disappear. Time bends. You forget the thing that's eating you alive. We have a word for that feeling now. Psychologists call it flow. That state where you're so absorbed you lose track of everything else. The Lydians didn't have the word, but they'd figured out the thing itself thousands of years ago when they were desperate enough to need it. And that's the secret hiding underneath every game ever made. We think games are frivolous, a waste of time, something to feel a little guilty about. But look at what they actually meant to the people who invented them. To the Egyptians, a game was the map of the soul's journey after death. To the Sumerian king, it was worth carrying into the grave. To the Lydians, it was the difference between despair and one more day alive. Games were never just play. From the very beginning, they were how humans practiced dying, how we imagined winning against impossible odds, and how we survived the days that felt unsurvivable. So tonight, when you pick up your phone and tap that little glowing app, or shuffle a deck of cards, or roll the dice in some board game with your family, remember this. You are doing something almost unimaginably old. You are joining a chain of players that stretches back before the pyramids, before writing, before the first city was ever built. They played in caves with the ankle bones of sheep. They played in golden tombs. They played through 18 years of famine so they wouldn't have to feel their own hunger. And now it's your turn. Same instinct, same escape, same very human need to disappear into a game and, just for a moment, forget everything else. We've been doing it for 5,000 years, and we're never going to stop.